Did you just see that? What?
All right, let's make one thing straight right away. Time travel doesn't work. Now, I'm not talking about in reality, but also in fiction. Time travel never works. I mean, at least not if you're looking at it from a concrete, like, does everything add up perspective. Closest I've ever seen was Primer, and Primer is almost impossible to follow as a result. It tries too hard to make sense. So if you're going to make a time travel movie, best not to try to make sense at all. In fact, take your good sense and throw it out the window. Now you got a movie. Today, we're talking about RWD. Good sense goes out the window. Time travel used in the worst possible way. Total mayhem, total pandemonium. But first, roll the intro. Here we go. Today we're talking about RWD, a 2015 movie by Matt Stewart. I don't understand why this movie kind of gets crapped on, if I'm being honest. People don't like this movie very much, and I don't understand why, because I had a great time, and I'm going to go into the details. So to cover how the found footage broadcast works, I'm just going to give you a quick review now. We're going to go through a full play-by-play breakdown of the movie, and then I'm going to cover the big question, the main question, the only question: should you watch it? And I will put timestamps for spoilers, so don't worry about that. I won't spoil anything if you don't want, or you can stick around for the spoiler section. Let's talk a little bit about why RWD is time travel done right. Here's the thing. Say you're able to go back in time. You go back in time 15 minutes, and now you get to watch yourself walking up to the time travel machine and pushing the button to go back in time 15 minutes. There's a problem here. The problem right away is that guy that you're watching over there go back in time, it's not you. You're you. You're standing over here at this moment. So when that guy goes back in time, it's another copy of you going back. And then from his perspective, he's going to go back in time and he's going to see himself and another version of himself that went back in time 15 minutes. You're both going to watch that other guy. And you could stop that other guy from going back in time, but that doesn't mean you're gone. Is this adding up to anything? No. Is this boring? Yes. So who cares? The point is this. If you're going to have time travel in your movie, have your main characters do something crazy with it. And that's what we get with RWD. We get a couple of characters who are pranksters, who are silly, who are just looking for some good YouTube content and thinking of wild ideas for what to do. And they stumble across time travel just randomly out. They just find a device. And of course, they use it in the dumbest way possible. And the thing about that is, after a while, it starts to dawn on them that those versions of themselves that they see over there, it's not really me, is it? Because they figure out pretty early that causality is meaningless. You exit causality as soon as you go back in time. You could throw a rock at yourself and have no memory of having been hit by a rock. And as soon as they figure out that guy over there isn't me, things get a little violent. But what I love about that is that we don't lose our sense of fun. And remember what it is about horror. Even though terrible, tragic things are going on, we could still have a good time.
Sorry, I just thought saying the word ghost would attract ghosts. I don't really know how this shit works, to be honest.
When you think about slasher movies are very rarely cynical, sad, horrifying affairs. Usually we're just in it because it's just crazy mayhem, wild times, and we're having fun with the fear. And that's what RWD does here very much, is it takes a pretty scary premise, really, and in ways that are frightening, and I'll talk about in the spoiler section. I don't think I really want to talk about it right now. But it takes a fairly frightening premise and just keeps having fun like we've been having up to this point. The thing I've always said about low budget movies or no budget movies, which is like this is at least low budget anyway, is that if you're having fun, it doesn't matter if there are rough edges. And there are a lot of rough edges with RWD. But there's no doubt these guys are having a blast making a movie. And that's the fun thing about this too, is it's just two guys. Two guys who are managing everything. They're managing camera work, sound effects, props, editing, the whole bit. This is as micro as it gets. And man, it's just fun. It's just a fun hang. You know, you sort of feel like you're hanging out with a couple of cool guys. Or not so cool guys. Actually, now that I think about it, they're not cool at all. But that's on purpose. I mean, you're just hanging out with a couple of knuckleheads. And you're not bored. I tell you, there's very little about this movie that's boring at all. Now, on the downside, it gets confusing quick. Because time travel gets confusing quick. I mean, it just does. And their way of coping with the confusion is to lean into it. The characters involved don't even know what's going on after a while. They have a vague idea. They know that they themselves are responsible for all these layers of nonsense, but they don't actually know if there's a version of them looking for them, if they're the last people through the time machine. They have no idea. And so there's layers upon layers of confusion that cannot be sorted out. And so you got to relax and ride the wave. I want to get into spoilers here, do a full beat by beat breakdown of the movie, which might be a little tricky because some of it is a little hazy, but I'm going to get into it. So if you want to see the movie first, just pause this video, go check it out. It's on YouTube, and then come on back for the spoilers. And if you don't mind having plot beats spelled out, I mean, really, honestly, this is one of those movies where you're just in it for the ride. So if it's spoiled, who cares? You're not going to have the movie ruined by my describing it. So either way, timestamps on the screen for when spoilers are over. Let's dig into it. So we start off with our two hapless YouTubers who are planning an episode of their ghost show. And it's very clear that their ghost hunting show is 100% fraudulent, and they make things up as they go along. They make up lore, they make up the backstory of everything. So they're just wandering around some fields and old graveyards, trying to figure out what kind of weird staging they can do to make content. They're clearly very unscrupulous guys. Well, whatever. So we see them mess around, and one of them reveals he's brought a switchblade. The other guy reveals he brought a taser. And there's at least one other weapon that they happen to have on them, but that's for later. The whole point is these are a couple of city kids who are out in the woods, and they figure, oh no, what if a redneck gets us? So they came armed. They make their way over to a house where they were going to interview the family of some infamous killer or something or other. I don't remember what the details are. It doesn't really matter. They scheduled the appointment wrong. Family's not home. Oops. But while they're at the house, some confusing events happen. They see someone running around the corner. One of them gets a call from the other guy, even though he's standing right there in front of him. Then there's stuff that the radio earpiece picks up that doesn't make any sense, because you can see the guy's not talking, and yet he hears him. He hears him right there in the earpiece. So something isn't adding up about this scene. It's all very confusing. They get a little spooked. They decide, you know what? Someone's messing with us. Let's just go back in the woods. There's no point in making ourselves a victim. So they get out in the woods. They read some user mail. One of them reveals he brought a gun. I can't remember his excuse for bringing that gun. Probably redneck thing again. And then as they're wandering around in the dark, they find an old silo. They approach the base of the silo and discover an entire underground facility. Now, it's very disused. It's all wrecked. But it's pretty cool. But they get separated right away. And there's all this camera glitching as they approach the silo and as they get inside, meant to imply that they're sort of crossing dimensional barriers or something like that. This is the machine is activated. As they're looking for each other in the building, they keep hearing strange noises, smashes, crashes, yells here and there throughout the building. It's very strange. And then eventually they find a laptop. And when they go to download their footage from their cameras to the laptop, they're back in the woods. It's weird, and it's daytime, and neither one of them remembers how they got back in the woods or how it ended up that they lost a bunch of hours, and it's in the middle of the day now. So they're wandering around, they find the silo again, and they're like, okay, well, let's check out that facility again. And they look, and the silo's empty. It's just a pool of water at the bottom. It doesn't make any sense. As they're wandering around, looking off in the distance, they see their past selves doing their recordings. They're shocked at first. And so they naturally mess with themselves. The first thing they think of doing as soon as they see past selves, they don't go to say hi. They don't try to avoid them to avoid screwing up the timeline. No, they're like, okay, how do we mess with these guys as best we can? So they stalk their past selves and they try to pull little pranks, including a lot of the things we saw in the previous scene. And at one point, something really interesting happens. One guy takes a rock and he throws it and knocks his past self in the head. And then he goes, wait a minute, that didn't happen before. So then they follow themselves into the underground facility and really prank at themselves. They start smacking the walls and breaking glass and banging on the pipes and doing whatever they can. And then they randomly run up and punch the other guy in the face, the old past version of themselves. And then that guy, instead of going back in time, ends up running off. So right away, that guy this time didn't go back in time. So we already have multiple copies of individuals who some of them went back in time and some of them didn't. We don't know how many times all of this has gone on. But it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that there's more than one copy of them. And it's around this time, as soon as the sun comes up, that they start realizing, wouldn't it be fun? The guy uses the switchblade on his past self. And then he, in turn, gets shot. And then someone else, in turn, shoots him. But that's no good. So his friend goes back in time and rewinds this whole scene. So everything you just saw didn't quite pan out that way. The objective timeline is rewritten now. So only one person gets stabbed and that's it. Okay. But it continues. Gradually, more and more copies of them seem to be out there, and they continue to play pranks to the point where you really don't know who's prey and who's predator anymore. Everyone is after everyone. At some point, they run for the car, and the car gets driven off by, presumably a pair of them. So the car's gone, and they're just chasing each other around in circles. And then right near the end, they figure out that they can use their cameras and this laptop in the factory or whatever it is to go back in time as far as possible and prevent this whole thing from starting in the first place. So that's what they plan on doing. And at the last second, there's a twist where somebody else went just a little bit further back than they did. But it's still them. Or is it? Right? It screws with your head. Anyway, that's it for spoilers. That's the breakdown. And if that didn't make any sense to you, or if it sounded like a crazy mismatch of wild scenes that are hard to follow, well, that's because it was. That's because it was. But you can't deny that we had a good time. I mean, this was like 90% spooks or chases, right? There was very little sitting around with a couple of guys killing time. There was some of that near the beginning as we were doing character development. We were exploring who these guys were, and it felt organic and it felt comfortable, and we didn't feel like we were in a hurry. But man, the pace of RWD increases and increases and increases as we go, to the point where the end is a complete panic and we can never really be sure it's even over. But what about the big question, the main question, the only question that matters? Should you watch it? This is really going to be about what kind of viewer you are, because obviously I loved it. Obviously, I think it was a lot of fun. But any of you right brain thinkers out there who need to line things up and make them add up, this is going to drive you crazy. You're going to hate this. And also, for those of you who do a lot of writing and you like your plots to be nice and linear and have a smooth arc where things grow and make sense at a simple point of completion, this is really going to drive you nuts. This is going to drive you nuts because it's just chaos. It's just mounting chaos as things go. So you guys, you're going to hate this movie. Having said that, if you just want to relax and just watch a bunch of wacky crap happen, this serves it up. It really does. And it does it in a way that's not condescending at all. It doesn't try to trick you into thinking that this all means something in a grand scheme of things kind of way. No, it's just a bunch of crazy crap that happened, and on purpose. But it also has rising action, so you don't get bored, and that's the main thing. Great for second screen watching. You can get away with it because really, it's so confusing. It doesn't matter if you miss something. Honestly, it's interesting enough that it will hold your attention. If you're the kind of person who has a hard time focusing on a movie, watch RWD. This guy can hold your attention. Really done well. I really do think people should give it a second chance. And I think it's one of those movies that will be more appreciated in a couple of years. I think that when it first came out, critics were trying to be all smarty about it, and they gave it a hard time. But I think it's one of those things that, in retrospect, people are going to look back on and appreciate a lot more than they did the first time they saw it. That's it for now. Next time, I actually don't know what the next movie is going to be, so I'll figure it out when I get there. But if you have any suggestions for what movie should be reviewed on the Found Footage podcast, leave a comment. I want to hear what you have to say. If you've seen RWD, please leave a comment. I need more people who've seen RWD promoting it out there. So leave a comment about RWD if you've seen it. And yeah, I'll see you next time. So long, travelers.
This is Burke.